My name is Rachel, and I am 31 years old. 3 years ago, my sister married a man who spent the next 2 years dismantling everything our family had built. His name was Marcus, and he was very good at what he did. Not obviously, nothing about Marcus was obvious. That was the precise nature of his skill. He arrived in our family wearing the particular warmth of someone who wants to be liked, attentive at dinners, charming with our parents. The kind of man who remembered birthdays and brought wine and made conversation with the ease of someone who had practiced it extensively. I liked him. For approximately 6 months, I genuinely liked him. And then I started noticing things. The first thing was small. My sister Claire, 2 years younger than me, the warmer one of us, the one who cried at commercials and remembered everyone's food allergies, and had spent her whole life being the person people turned to when they needed taking care of, had always called me on Sunday evenings. Without fail. For as long as I could remember, it had been our standing thing. An hour, sometimes more, the easy overlap of two sisters who had always been genuinely each other's people. The Sunday calls stopped 3 months after the wedding. Not dramatically. Not with an explanation. Just, they stopped. I called a few times. Got voicemail. Got short texts back. So sorry. Crazy busy. Call you soon. Soon never came. The second thing was money. My parents had always been generous in the particular way of people who had not had much when they were young and had built something solid and wanted to share it. Not extravagantly, they were careful people, but present. The helping with deposits and covering emergencies kind of generosity that families do for each other quietly. In the year after Claire's wedding, that generosity began flowing in one direction. Toward Marcus. Or rather, toward Marcus and Claire, which in practice meant toward the life Marcus had decided they should have. The apartment upgrade that was slightly beyond their budget. The car that was significantly beyond their budget. The business venture Marcus had been pursuing that required capital he didn't have. My parents gave. They always gave when Claire asked. They didn't notice, or didn't let themselves notice, that Claire was asking more frequently, for larger amounts, and that the things she was asking for were Marcus's ideas. The third thing was what he said about me. I found out by accident. My mother mentioned, casually, not realizing the significance, that Marcus had said I could be a negative influence on Claire. Those exact words. A negative influence on Claire. Me. Her sister. The person she had called every Sunday evening for a decade. I sat with that for a long time. And then I started paying very close attention. My parents were in their 60s. Comfortable, not wealthy, but the solid comfortable of people who had worked hard and saved carefully and owned their home and had enough for a good retirement. My father had sold his small business 3 years earlier. My mother had retired from teaching. They were the kind of people Marcus had identified, I understood later, as useful. Not cynically, or not only cynically. I think he believed, in the particular way of people who are very good at justifying their own behavior, that he was simply being resourceful. That family was supposed to help family. That my parents had enough, and he needed some, and this was simply how things worked. What he hadn't calculated was me. Rachel. My mother called me on a Wednesday. Her voice had the particular quality it got when something was wrong and she was trying to decide how wrong. Mom, I said. What happened? Marcus came by yesterday, she said. Without Claire. He wanted to talk to your father about investing in the business. I sat up straighter. How much? I said. A pause. $40,000, she said. I closed my eyes. $40,000. My parents' retirement savings. The money my father had built over 30 years of running a small business and had sold carefully and put away for the years ahead. Did Dad say yes? I said. He's thinking about it, my mother said. Marcus was very persuasive. Mom, I said. Don't let him say yes until I've had a chance to look at the business plan. Rachel. Please, I said. Just give me a week. She gave me the week. And what I found in that week changed everything. I spent 3 days going through Marcus's business. Not covertly, I had a professional reason to look. I worked in financial consulting, had for 6 years, and the particular skill set of my job was exactly this: looking at numbers and understanding what they actually said rather than what someone wanted you to think they said. What the numbers said about Marcus's business was not good. Not failed, not yet, but structured in ways that concerned me deeply. The projections were optimistic in the specific way of projections made by someone who needed them to look good rather than someone who had done the honest math. The existing debts were larger than Marcus had disclosed to my parents. The previous investor, someone who had put in $20,000 2 years earlier, had been paid back partially and then, as far as I could tell, quietly. I called a colleague. Asked her to look too. She called me back in 48 hours. Rachel, she said, this is not a business I would advise anyone to invest in. I know, I said. The projections are optimistic, I said. Fictional, she said. The debt structure alone. I know, I said. Thank you. I sat at my kitchen table with the numbers in front of me and thought about my parents' retirement savings. About $40,000. About Marcus in their living room without Claire being very persuasive. Then I called Claire. She answered on the second ring. Rachel, she said. Slightly wary, she had sensed something in the fact that I was calling, which told me she already knew something was happening. I need to talk to you, I said. About Marcus and the business and what he asked Mom and Dad for. A pause. He told me he was going to ask them, she said carefully. Do you know how much? I said. He mentioned $40,000, Claire, I said. He asked them for $40,000. Their retirement money. Silence. He said it would be a smaller amount, she said. Her voice different. Something moving in it. He said a lot of things, I said. I've spent 3 days looking at his numbers. I need you to hear what I found. Rachel. Please, I said. Just listen. She listened. I told her everything, the projections, the debt, the previous investor, my colleague's assessment. I told her plainly, without drama, the way I delivered difficult financial information professionally. Just the facts. Just what the numbers said. When I finished, she was quiet for a long time. He told me the business was doing well, she said finally. I know, I said. He showed me projections. I know, I said. Claire, those projections are not realistic. Another long silence. Why didn't he tell me the real numbers, she said. Not asking me. Asking herself. The specific question of someone beginning to understand something they had been not understanding for a while. I don't know, I said. But I think you need to ask him. She asked him. She told me later what happened. Not immediately. Not that night. It took 3 days for her to tell me. 3 days of silence that I respected because she needed them. She had asked him directly. He had explained. Minimized. Reframed. The particular skill set of someone who is very good at managing the narrative. But Claire had my numbers in front of her. And Claire, the warmer one of us, the one who cried at commercials, was also not stupid. He couldn't explain the previous investor, she told me. I asked him 4 times in 4 different ways, and he couldn't explain it. What did he say? I said. That I was being influenced by you, she said. That you had always had a problem with him. That this was you trying to control our marriage. And? I said. And I told him that the numbers didn't care what your motivations were, she said. The numbers said what they said. I sat with that. With my sister, the warmer one, the one who had stopped calling on Sundays, saying the numbers said what they said with the particular clarity of someone who has decided to see clearly regardless of what it costs. What happens now? I said. I don't know, she said. But I told him Mom and Dad aren't giving him the $40,000. How did he take that? Not well, she said. Are you okay? I said. No, she said. But I will be. Marcus called me on a Friday. I had been expecting it. He was not warm this time. The warmth had been a costume, and he had taken it off. What was underneath was the specific cold of someone who has been caught and is responding with offense rather than accountability. You had no right, he said. To what? I said. To go through my business. To talk to Claire. To interfere in our marriage. I had every right, I said. You asked my parents for $40,000 of their retirement savings without giving them accurate information. That is my right. The information was accurate. Marcus, I said. I work in financial consulting. I have been doing this for 6 years. The projections you gave my parents do not reflect the actual state of your business, and you know that. Silence. You've never liked me, he said. That's not relevant, I said. What's relevant is that you were about to take $40,000 from 2 people who trusted you because their daughter married you. Claire supports me. Claire had incomplete information, I said. She has complete information now. You had no right, he said again. The repetition of someone who has lost the argument and is returning to the emotional claim. I had every right, I said again. And I would do it again. He hung up. I sat in my apartment and felt, not triumph, the particular heaviness of a necessary thing that has cost something. My sister's marriage was in trouble. Not because of me, because of what Marcus had done, what he had been doing, and because Claire had finally seen it. But the timing made me the visible cause in his narrative, and narratives matter to people who are trying to avoid accountability. I called my mother. Don't give him the money, I said. We decided that already, she said. Your father and I talked last night. How is Dad? Angry, she said. Quietly. You know how he gets. I did know. Mom, I said. Claire is going to need us. Whatever happens with the marriage. She's going to need to know we're here. We're always here, my mother said. Simply. The truth of it. I know, I said. Make sure she knows. Claire went to therapy. Solo, without Marcus, which was itself significant. She called me the day she made the appointment. I need to think clearly, she said. And I can't think clearly when he's in the room. That makes sense, I said. Rachel, she said. Did you know? Before? That something was wrong. I thought about the honest answer. I noticed things, I said. Asterisk, the Sunday calls stopping. The money conversations. Things he said about me to Mom. I paused. I didn't know the full picture. But I knew something wasn't right. Why didn't you say something sooner, she said. Because you love him, I said. And because saying something before you were ready to hear it would have pushed you away, not toward the truth. I waited until there was something concrete. Something with numbers. She was quiet for a moment. The numbers, she said. A small sound that was almost a laugh. I never thought numbers would be the thing that made me see clearly. Numbers don't have agendas, I said. No, she said. They don't. The therapy took 4 months. Claire went every week. She called me regularly, not to report, just to talk, the way she had before the Sunday calls had stopped. The easy overlap of 2 sisters finding their way back to each other. Marcus went twice to couples therapy, then stopped. He said the therapist was biased. He said Claire was being influenced by her family. He said the things that people say when they don't want to examine themselves and need someone else to be the problem. Claire listened. And then she made a decision. She called me on a Sunday evening. The first Sunday call in almost 2 years. Rachel, she said. Claire, I said. I'm leaving him, she said. I sat down. Are you sure? I said. Yes, she said. Asterisk, I've been sure for about 6 weeks. I've been making sure I was sure for 6 weeks. She paused. He's not a bad person. I want you to know I don't think he's a bad person. Okay, I said. But he's not honest, she said. And I can't build a life with someone who isn't honest. About money. About his business. She stopped. About me. About what I need and whether he's capable of providing it. What do you need? I said. I need Sunday calls with my sister, she said. I pressed my hand flat against my kitchen counter. You have that, I said. You always had that. I know, she said. I just forgot for a while. The separation was not easy. These things are never easy. The unwinding of a life built with someone, the logistics of shared space and shared finances, and the particular grief of something that was supposed to be permanent becoming not permanent. Marcus did not handle it gracefully. There were difficult weeks where he said things designed to make Claire doubt herself, weeks where he tried to go around her directly to my parents, weeks where the narrative he had constructed about me being a negative influence was deployed repeatedly as an explanation for why everything had fallen apart. My parents were steady. They had always been steady, the particular steadiness of people who had decided their children came first and meant it. They didn't engage with Marcus's narrative. They didn't argue with it. They simply showed up for Claire, consistently and without drama, and let the narrative collapse under the weight of its own implausibility. I stayed out of the legal proceedings. Not because I didn't care, but because Claire needed to do this herself, and doing it herself meant not having her sister in the room managing it. I was available. I was present. I was the Sunday call and the emergency text and the person she sent documents to when she needed a second set of eyes. But the decisions were hers. Every one of them. 1 year after the separation, Claire had an apartment of her own. Small, in a neighborhood she had chosen for herself, not the neighborhood Marcus had decided they should live in, not the aesthetic he had curated, but the one she actually liked. The one with the farmer's market on Saturday mornings and the coffee shop with the good pastries and the particular quality of morning light she had mentioned once, years ago, in a Sunday call. She had remembered. She had chosen it. I visited on a Saturday in October. We went to the farmer's market, the one that had been part of why she chose the neighborhood. Walked through the stalls in the autumn morning. She bought flowers. I bought something I didn't need and was glad to have. She was different. Not completely different, she was still Claire, still the warmer one, still the one who cried at commercials. But different in the way of someone who has been through something difficult and has come out the other side knowing their own mind in a way they didn't before. How are you actually? I said. Good, she said. Actually good. Not automatic? Not automatic, she said. Real. We found a bench by the flower stalls. Sat in the October sunshine with our coffees. Can I tell you something? She said. Always, I said. I've been thinking about the Sunday calls, she said. About when they stopped. And I've been angry at myself for letting them stop. For not seeing what was happening. Don't be, I said. Why not? Because you were inside it, I said. And it's very hard to see something clearly when you're inside it. That's not a character flaw. That's just being human. She looked at her coffee. You saw it, she said. I was outside it, I said. I had the easier position. You didn't let it go, she said. Even when it would have been easier to. You're my sister, I said. Easier isn't the point. She looked at me. Something in her eyes that was both old and new, the look of someone who has come back from somewhere difficult and is glad to be back. Thank you, she said. For the numbers. I laughed. The real kind. Anytime, I said. My parents had dinner with Claire every week now. The restored version, warm and easy, the particular chaos of a family that genuinely liked each other reassembling itself around a table that no longer had someone at it who was calculating what it contained. My father had never given Marcus the $40,000. He had also never fully said what he felt about the attempt. My father was not a man who said things directly, preferring the particular eloquence of actions. But at Christmas dinner, in the warm chaos of the family restored, he had raised his glass. To the people at this table, he said. And to the ones who made sure the right people stayed at it. He looked at me when he said it. I raised my glass back. I want to say something to you. If you have watched someone you love be slowly misled, if you have seen the numbers that don't add up, the stories that shift slightly each time they're told, the particular erosion of a person's confidence and connection and clarity, I want you to hear this. You are allowed to say something. Not loudly. Not with accusations that can be dismissed as jealousy or interference or the negative influence narrative that people who are caught always reach for. But clearly, with evidence. With the numbers that don't have agendas. Say the true thing. Say it from love. Say it once, clearly, and let the person you love decide what to do with it. And then keep showing up. Keep the Sunday calls available. Keep the door open. Because the people who love us sometimes need time to find their way back to what they already know. And when they do, when the Sunday call comes, when they choose the apartment with the farmer's market, when they sit on the bench in the October sunshine and say actually good, not automatic. That is everything. That is what you were showing up for. It was always worth it. If this story moved you, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Has anyone ever tried to come between you and someone you love? Share your story in the comments. I read every single one. Tell me where you are watching from. I love knowing how far these stories reach. Until next time, keep showing up. Keep the door open. It's always worth it.